Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance still coexist. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome, welcome once again to a look into our past where we talk a little bit about retro wrestling. Okay, retro wrestling tonight. What am I talking about? Retro wrestling. 80s and 90s wrestling. If you're a wrestling fanatic, grew up during those times, you know that wrestling was on the rise. And it was huge. It was exciting. It was definitely a great time to watch wrestling. The storylines were amazing. Um, you know, um, I'll tell you that it was just exciting stuff. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan. We've talked a little bit about in previous wrestling, retro wrestling talk. A lot of people, we've had debates on the greatest intercontinental title matches in the WWE. Um, you know, we've talked about some of our favorite stables. Obviously, a lot of folks remember the days of the NWO. We've talked about some of our favorite announcement teams, favorite commentator teams. My personal, I've got two of them: Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan, along with Vince McMahon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Amazing commentator teams. Of course, I also remember the days when Roddy Rod Piper was on commentary, and even Macho Man Randy Savage was also on commentary as well. Just amazing, just awesome stuff there. Um, and someone even brought up the Montreal Screwjob. I don't like talking about it because it's one of those things. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding it, and I liken it to be one of the last great moments of kayfabe. Okay, uh, and this is a theory, obviously, but the two people that could probably, break the silence on that aren't talking. Okay, they're still alive, but they ain't talking. Or the people involved, I should say, aren't talking. I honestly think it was one of the last greatest moments of kayfabe. And most people, because social media being what it is, kayfabe is not what it once was. So if you don't know, if you're fairly new to kind of the wrestling terminology, kayfabe is uh, back in the old days of wrestling, the bad guys only traveled with the bad guys, and the good guys only traveled with the good guys, and that's the way it was. Kayfabe was serious stuff back then, and wrestlers could actually be fired and probably not get another job with another promotion if they broke kayfabe. But today with social media, kayfabe is pretty well dead. Okay, um, that's just kind of how it is. So, you know, with kayfabe being what it was back in the day, we've even talked about uh, Sergeant Slaughter versus Hulk Hogan for the World Championship. That was big. That was really big. Of course, most people tend to forget that Hulk Hogan was penciled in to win the AWA title. I don't remember if he actually held it, but I know it won. I know he was penciled in to win it, and that was Vern Gagne's promotion. So I know some people don't like Hulk Hogan. I didn't like his backstage politicking that he did with towards other wrestlers, but hey, that's just me. Okay, I know there's been some debate on some of the other stuff that's come along the ways, but y'all got to remember, um, like a lot of people accuse him of being racist, but the truth of it is I mean, if you really ever go back and look at his comments, he was almost like when you listen to him, it wasn't like he was saying he was. He was literally almost saying like he wasn't sure, you know, and that's a whole nother can of worms. You know, it's kind of like if he's questioning himself, I'd say he's on, you know, if you're still questioning yourself and your morals, I'd say, you know, that's 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 a good thing. Okay. Um, I know a lot of folks also talked about. We've brought up the Ultimate Warrior. Most people would know Andre the Giant, and Andre the Giant was absolutely, from what I understand, one of the most gentle giants. Oh, how you doing, Tori? Good to see you. Um, Andre the Giant has always been considered kind of like he was kind of like the judge backstage, but he was also a gentle giant. From what I understand, he was one of the nicest guys probably to ever walk into the squared circle. Like he was really big on the traditions of wrestling. But now that I've said that, I know from listening to a lot of interviews that Andre the Giant did not like the Ultimate Warrior. I know a lot of folks really liked him. And I know some folks, you know, when it came to the Ultimate Warrior being world champion, there's a debate amongst us retro wrestling fans whether or not he was a good world champion. I tend to lean towards he really wasn't. Um, and I have my reasons for it. That doesn't, yeah, that blows my mind. Yeah, I think it was Andre the Giant's mom wasn't even really that big of a woman. She was really, really a teeny tiny little thing. So the fact that she had a son that big was just, you know, phenomenal. As a matter of fact, most people tend, you always, when you listen to the you know, what was then the WWF, they always try to make WrestleMania, the original WrestleMania, they really try to make it sound magical. And no, it really wasn't. It was actually kind of a joke compared to WrestleManias that have come since. WrestleMania 2 was a disaster. By WrestleMania 3, they had actually worked out the bugs, but the original WrestleMania was horrible. Absolutely horrible. As a matter of fact, Andre the Giant was actually booked in an arm wrestling match because by this time his health had taken a turn for the worst. I can't remember if by this time he'd already played his part in you know, the Princess Bride or you know, so, yeah, the Princess Bride, that particular movie, and good movie, good movie. If you've never seen it, amazing movie. Andre the Giant, you know, just an amazing guy. But he absolutely hated working with the Ultimate Warrior. They had a series of matches, and from what I understand, the Ultimate Warrior, I mean, he put on, you know, he put on an energetic show, but he really wasn't that good to work with in the ring. A lot of his shots were way too stiff, if you will, and sometimes hurt a lot of guys. I know Bobby the Brain Heenan actually complained of the Ultimate Warrior hurting him. And Bobby the Brain Heenan really was not a wrestler. He was just a manager. He just understood the business. And the fact that he took the shot that he did, I mean, just and to complain about it all the way up until his final days, complaining of the pain that he took from the Ultimate Warrior, it should tell you something. And Bobby the Brain Heenan actually talked about how Andre the Giant hated working with him. There's one particular story that stands out where they were working in the ring, and you know, the Ultimate Warrior's clotheslines were just too stiff. And in the old days, what the veterans in the ring would do is they would call the match. They would tell the younger guy how the match was supposed to go. You know, as they're working in the ring, they knew the finish already, but they would call it basically from bell all the way up until the finish. They would call that match. They would call that, and this was like this for years. I don't know if they still do that or not, but they called that match, and Andre would, because he was the older guy, he called that match in the ring. Now the Ultimate Warrior was just way too stiff with his shots, and from what I understand, Andre finally got tired of it and kind of put the hand up and popped him a good one from hitting him too hard, and the Warrior kind of staggered back, and he realized, hey, your shots are too stiff. I'm about to lay the hurting on you, and that pretty much he started taking it a little bit easier. Uh, Folks, you got to remember, even though wrestling is, it is, it's a performance art, basically. It's a performance art. A lot of you got to remember that even though it is a performance art, that, wrestling is just that, guys can still get hurt. Just like in, your regular theater productions, those guys can still get hurt. Okay, they can get hurt really bad, if they're doing any wire work or anything like that, they can get hurt. So wrestling is no different. Um, you know, Listen to some of the stuff that Mick Foley talks about in his time in wrestling, and you'll really catch on to that. You'll really get a really good idea what it was like for those guys. For those guys in the ring, they would put on. Back in the day, they would put on such a show. Those guys would get hurt and hurt really bad. And I know, Mick Foley, who played as Cactus Jack. Honestly and truthfully, who's with me? Who's watching right now? Who's with me? That they should not have came out with the Mankind character or the Dude Love character. It should have been Cactus Jack from WCW. Come on, who's with me? Cactus Jack. That would have been 1,000 times better than the Mankind. Come on, a freaking sock. Come on. I mean, I know a lot of folks really liked it, but in all honesty, give me Cactus Jack, okay? Who's with me? Cactus Jack. I honestly think that would have been the better way. It was Owen Hart that was doing some wire work, and when he fell, he hit the turnbuckle post. Now, immediately there is no footage to really catch, but you can look up on the internet some photos that have been leaked to the from the public because WWE has really tried to kind of keep that down, because the show must go on, sort of thing. Now, I know there's a lot of folks, and I'm kind of one of those folks included, that Owen Hart did not feel comfortable doing that particular Blue Blazer stunt. He really didn't like it at all. He wasn't comfortable coming down from the rafters like that. And it was a Vince Russo idea. Now, I'm going to tell y'all right now, I am not a Vince Russo fan. Because in all honesty, I mean, he takes credit where he shouldn't take credit. Just take a look at WCW in its final days. The term, buckle post match, and just really stupid stuff like that. Vince Russo, in my opinion, was not as good of a writer as he thinks he is. Honestly, he would have been much better on a TV show writing, a good sitcom, not wrestling. Okay. Um, I honestly felt that a lot of stuff that he did in the WWE during the Attitude Era and in WCW in its last few years, I honestly feel that Vince Russo was a horrible, horrible, horrible writer for the show. And he actually did more harm to the World Championship in WCW, than anybody else I know of on three separate occasions. Number one, that whole thing where he laid down, Jeff Jarrett lays down for Hulk Hogan. The David Arquette thing as world champion, and the time he put the world championship on himself. Honestly and truthfully, yeah, I'm sorry. I honestly think he did more harm for the world title than any other person before or since. The big gold belt deserved a lot better than that. And guys like Ric Flair and Sting, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage. Obviously, the list goes on. But in reality, at that point, we're talking, um, that that belt basically, Jim Herd couldn't even have done worse. Okay, Jim Herd couldn't have. Vince Russo did a great job crapping on that title. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel. Some of you're welcome to argue that, and feel free to. Feel free to. This is we can debate that if you'd like. Um, honestly, but there, really quick, there is a conspiracy theory out there that Vince Russo was actually planted by the WWE to destroy WCW, to drive the ratings so far down that by the time WCW was ready for sale, that Vince McMahon, he really bought it for a song. He really did buy it for a song. There really wasn't much left of WCW by that point. Really quick, ECW. Jim Cornette oftentimes talks about ECW. Uh, okay, you're with me on that, Tori? Okay, awesome. I myself, I love, again, I love the retro wrestling. Around early 2000, I kind of around 2000, I really started giving up on wrestling. Wrestling started really losing its excitement. And it really, at the time that the supposed Attitude Era really came in, um, I honestly lost a lot of interest in wrestling. I honestly felt that wrestling just did not have, you know, the people that really made a difference, if you know what I'm saying. There was a lot of folks that really, that weren't around to make the difference. By this time, Bret the Hitman Hart was really kind of out of the picture. You had hit or miss with Shawn Michaels by this time. Uh, Degeneration X really had run its course. I mean, when you really look at the big picture by this time, the Attitude Era. Yes, it was good for a lot of folks. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, by this time, one of the biggest mistakes that the WWF ever made was switching to the name World Wrestling Entertainment. Okay, instead of World Wrestling Federation. Now, we talked about this in the very first time we did this segment, and most people would be shocked to know everyone thought that there was some sort of lawsuit from the World Wildlife Federation on the initials, and that's not true. There was some debate around that time, but the real reason why the WWF changed its name to the WWE is it had all to do with taxes in the state of New York. Uh, Most people tend to forget this because WWE headquarters is in New York State. So there was a tax being levied towards sports. And Vince McMahon got the idea, well, why don't we just rebrand it as sports entertainment, not actually being a sport anymore to avoid that tax? So that's why it was rebranded that way. It had nothing to do with the World Wildlife Federation because if you go all the way back before Titan Sports bought out Vince McMahon Sr., the WWF was originally known as the WWWF during the territory days back in as far back as I know, I think the 60s all the way into the early 80s. It may go further back than that, but I don't 100% know. Any true wrestling fans would probably be able to tell me a little bit better than that. Um, yeah, it if there's one thing you guys will know about what Prince Magnum always says when it comes to the whole thing of corporations, follow the money. When you think anything's dirty, follow the money. Always, always, follow that money. Always, always, follow that money. Always, always 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 follow that money. So, I know there was a big debate on that, but no, that's long since been debunked. I know there was talk about that, but the World Wildlife Federation and the World Wrestling Federation had both been around for a long time. And then all of a sudden they get this crazy idea. I know at that point that any judge that had that in front of him, like, get the fuck out of here, man. Really? Really? You guys have coexisted this long and you're just now saying something? Fuck you. Get out of my courtroom. So no judge would have seen that. Okay. No judge would have looked at that. Now, that's not to say that there wasn't some debate, but no, it had all to do with avoiding taxes. Um, Now, really quick, for those that don't know, back in the 1980s, I was a little Hulkamaniac. Okay, back in the 1980s, I was a Hulkamaniac all the way. He and it worked because in the 1980s, I'm watching He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I'm watching, Voltron, Defender of the Universe, and I'm watching She-Ra, Princess of Power, and cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. So the image of Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins, train, these are all wholesome values. And I know when in the, because I'm not quite a teenager yet. I'm getting close to the, pre-adolescence. Yep, the real Scooby Doo, absolutely. I know I'm getting close to the real, um, you know, I'm getting close to that teenager status. So, when the whole steroid scandal broke, that ain't vitamins, kids, okay? That's not vitamins. In this particular case, when the whole scandal broke, um, I'm like, surely. And even though Hulk Hogan's, he's like, I'm like, okay, so he took him for a time. Okay. He took him for a time. People make mistakes. I couldn't believe that, folks, I'm going to say something about steroids for a second that is going to shock everybody. And JR, Jim Ross, really did break it down. And it was in reference to China, you know, um, Joni Lawler, Loner, or something like that. Uh, a lot of folks always ask him, "Do you know if China was juicing? If she was on steroids?" And he said, "Honest to goodness, I don't know. But you have to remember that even though you're taking, that the person is taking steroids, they still have to hit the gym. It isn't like you just put the steroids in your body and then you automatically get built, you get stacked. It doesn't work that way. You still got to hit the gym." So, in essence, even though Hulk Hogan was, big and we know that he was taking steroids at one time, think about it for a second. He still had to hit that gym. So even though there was some artificial in there, he was still training. So to me, that made, and I knew that back then. So I'm like, even though he did it, he was still kind of cheating. He still had to hit the gym. So he still was training. So that was still something I could get behind. And of course, when the whole NWO thing broke, I mean, it was devastating to me because by that time it was 15. It was like one of the last pieces of my childhood, that was still kind of pure, especially in wrestling, because, that's Hulk Hogan. So that was devastating to this guy right here. Say what you will, but, and I know some people kind of downplay it. He did help bring wrestling to the mainstream that it is today. Uh, Even people that don't like wrestling, that don't keep up with wrestling, everybody knows who Hulk Hogan is. Everybody knows who he is, okay? Um, so much so, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, everybody. Ask any non-wrestling fan if they know who Hulk Hogan is. Isn't he that one famous wrestler? He body slammed Andre the Giant back in the 80s. Everybody knows that one. You know, he beat the Iron Sheik. Um, Most people tend to forget the Iron Sheik was a four-time WWF World Champion. Oh, now you're talking about the Rock and Wrestling Connection. The Rock and Wrestling Connection uh, was kind of a joint venture, I know, with like MTV, which was fairly new at that time. So obviously, Cyndi Lauper having Lou Albano in her music video, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, obviously was a great connection to wrestling. And of course, Cyndi Lauper was one of the first ladies in wrestling. A lot of people automatically think Miss Elizabeth, but yes, uh, Cyndi Lauper is one of the great valets in wrestling. But I myself, when it comes to wrestling, one of my favorite valets is not Miss Elizabeth. I do like her, but one of my favorites of all time for wrestling valets is still, I mean, Missy Hyatt. Missy Hyatt was one of my all-time favorites. Okay, who's with me? Retro wrestling, Chairman. We're back on retro wrestling. I thought it would be fun today to talk about. Uh, get out your old wrestling memories. We're gonna have some fun, brother. We were just talking about Hulk Hogan and the steroid scandal. A lot of people do tend to forget about Missy Hyatt. Missy Hyatt was one of the great valets in wrestling. Early days of like NWA and WCW and, just great promotions. She got around a lot in those early promotions. Of course, Luna Vashon. Luna Vashon was a great one. Absolutely amazing. Amazing. Amazing valet. Um, still a Luna Vachon fan. Of course, a lot of people tend to forget she was an amazing competitor in the ring herself. Luna Vachon was absolutely amazing, and she is definitely missed amongst us true wrestling fans. Um, Hands down, bar none, Luna Vachon, just an amazing wrestler. Um, I don't think she gets enough credit for her wrestling capability. She was a great valet. And to my knowledge, for those of you who, yes, she did make the Hall of Fame. She did make the Hall of Fame. Really quick, for those that do not know, Luna Vachon also has another one that most people tend to forget about. She was featured, one of the first female wrestlers to be featured in a WWF video game, WWF Raw. Okay, WWF Raw. She was the only female wrestler in that game. Most people tend to forget that because a lot of people tend to forget that she was a great competitor in the ring. I know all the way back in the 80s. I think, if I remember correctly, she also came from the Fabulous Moolah's wrestling school, which that has horror stories of itself. Hey, Seven Tails, and welcome to the live stream. Talking a little retro wrestling tonight. Absolutely. We're, talking a little bit about retro wrestling. Again, I'm a big fan of the old wrestling days. I've even, got to see a little bit. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Um, all right. Shoot it to me through Discord. I'll have to definitely take a look-see at it. Most definitely. Um, you know, of course, then again, I also remember when Alundra Blaze went over to WCW and dropped her women's title in the trash can. I remember that. Okay. Um, and I'm still I know she went by Medusa in WCW, which she was going by Medusa, went to the WWF. Obviously, they couldn't call her Medusa anymore, so they started calling her Alundra Blaze. And then when her contract ran out, she went back to WCW. And that's where we get that world title drop into the trash can. Um, and she was going by Medusa again because everyone recognized her in WCW as Medusa. Most people, really quick, WCW had a rough time in the late 80s under Jim Herd. You had, and we talked about this before, that horrible tag team. You had, well, okay, Jim Herd wanted to take Ric Flair out of mainstream and wanted to take away the Nature Boy thing and turn him into some almost like cartoon character sort of thing, calling him Spartacus. When I heard about this, obviously years later, I'm like, what the fuck? That's the dirtiest player in the game. That's like, no, you don't do that. What's going on, Raven? Talking a little retro wrestling here tonight. You know, so Jim Herd was actually bad for WCW, but by the time Eric Bischoff got in place, I mean, he did turn the company around. He really did have some good ideas. But in charge of booking at the time of Eric Bischoff was Kevin Sullivan. Well, it's good to see you, Raven. Good to see you, brother. Um, but talking a little retro wrestling, yeah, Eric Bischoff did a pretty good job. He knew what he was doing, and he did do a lot better of a job than Jim Herd. Jim Herd, Jim Herd. Most people tend to forget that Jim Herd really, he was like the chairman of Pizza Hut. Okay, what the frick does he know about wrestling? Okay, um, at the time, Jim Herd was in charge of WCW, what was at one time called the NWA, and then there was a whole transfer of titles and all this other stuff. Which at the time, when it was still like the NWA and all that, it was called Crockett, Jim Crockett Promotions. Yeah, we're going back a ways. Um, so Jim Crockett Promotions, at that time NWA going into WCW. Really quick, in the early days of Crockett Promotions, most people tend to forget that a singles competition was not the big one. It was it was actually tag team wrestling that was bigger in Crockett Promotions back in the 70s. Tag team wrestling was much bigger, and they wanted to shift it, but it was a guy who, a Native American actually, Wahoo Mcdaniels. Thank you so much, Chairman. But it was a guy named like Wahoo McDaniels and some other guy who put on a clinic. And from I've never actually seen the footage, but I know it's supposed to possibly exist. But they were beating on each other so dang hard, they were drawing blood on each other's chest, and they were really. It was a knockdown, drag out, and even though wrestling's supposed to be fake, they were going all out, like hit me hard because we want to make this really stand out. We want to put singles at the forefront. So it's guys like Wahoo McDaniels that really did that at the time. That Crockett Promotions, like back in the 70s, they wanted to make it more mainstream, singles competition more mainstream than tag team. Which Jim Cornette actually goes into a whole lot more detail than I can because he's like a wealth of historical knowledge. It's one of the reasons why I like listening to him when it comes to retro wrestling. I don't always agree with him politically, but when it comes to retro wrestling, I always appreciate him. So he's just a great guy there. What's going on, J Dog? We're talking a little retro wrestling tonight. It's good to see you, brother. Folks get to know blue people get to know the blue people. The guys in gray get to know them too. Everyone just, don't forget to network and get to know one another. All right. Tori, that's awesome. Um, My Discord, we don't use anymore. The Discord, yeah, it says you like. I know you like the you like Minecraft a lot, and I haven't even messed with Minecraft in a while. Oh, China. Yeah, we were just talking about her. Um, because, afterlife, okay, sis. Um, actually, well, but there you go, J Dog. Uh, we were just talking about China a little while ago because in charge of talent relations for WWE at one time was Jim Ross. A lot of folks tend to forget that because he was great on commentary, but he was in charge of talent relations, so he had to deal a lot with with the talent. And a lot of people had constantly asked him, was China on the juice? Was she? Um, I honestly don't know, Chairman. We'll have to find that out because Ian's, Spirit Wolf Ian is, he kind of runs that because I'm dealing with so much stuff now trying to build the channel. Because, we got Discord and, not only do we have, the Discord to keep up with, but I got the Teespring store and I've got Patreon to keep up with now. Plus, we're expanding into all sorts of other crazy avenues. We still got the TikTok page. Um, and we're even looking to expand even further, and all that other stuff. So we're really getting out there into a lot of other avenues, to say the least at this point. Uh, so uh, Spirit Wolf really has to keep up with the Discord. Because it's just so hard for me to keep up with everything, and especially with everything going on with Princess Space. So, uh, if you have his new Discord, then then you're in. Okay. Uh, hey, what's going on, QV? Good to see you, Hoss. Talking retro wrestling tonight. But back to the topic of China, because they always, because China was a, big strong woman. She broke a lot of barriers for the lady wrestlers for today. She really broke a lot of ground. She was the first woman to win the Intercontinental title. She was a great competitor. She would mix it up with the boys just as much as anybody else. Just a great competitor. Honestly, she deserves her own spot in the WWE Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Um, Tori, that's awesome. But let me kind of go into a little bit of detail here. A lot of oh, absolutely. Uh, you know, a lot of folks have asked the question, did China ever do steroids? Was she on the juice? Folks, let's be real here, okay? Even if she was on the juice, even if she was, some of, her muscle was artificial, let's be real, okay? Regardless of her being on, even if she was on roids, you got to take into consideration that she's still got to hit the gym to get those muscles anyways. That's an enhancement drug that has serious side effects. So because of that, she still hit the gym. She still worked out. Okay. Yeah. Um, it is wrong. And the WWE has its wellness policy, but you also have to take into consideration that she still had to hit the gym. Okay. Even if she was, hitting the roids, she still had to hit the gym too. It doesn't work that way. And I've known this for years. Obviously, some people, well, she was, they were taking roids. I, I don't have the means to do it right now. Uh, oh, that's the AC to kick. I thought it was the dang. For a second, I thought it started raining the way it turned on. I was like, what the frick? But anyhow, so just kind of bear that in mind. For those of you who, it's like, well, this wrestler was, juicing. Yeah, yeah. Even those diet, real quick, the old diet pills, they didn't work either. They really didn't do what a lot of you still had to eat right and eat healthy, okay? All that stuff, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, I actually remember when you could buy over-the-counter diet pills, and those diet pills, they didn't work the way that people thought. You still had to, you still had to go out and you still had to eat right and work out and all that other stuff. It doesn't work that way. There's no magic pill to make you, and even the people taking, that were taking the steroids, you're back to, hey, you know, um, if you will, um, yeah, you still got to, they still had to put in the work. So in that regard, even though there was some artificial there was still, hard work involved too. And in that regard, I mean, you could say what you will about China, but in all honesty, I mean, if anything, I just find that impressive that she was still putting in the work. Myself, I, have nothing but respect for her. Now, I know at one point, a lot of folks brought up Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero. Um, I remember Eddie Guerrero in WCW, and yes, technically he was a luchador wrestler. Now, y'all know my passion for luchador wrestling. For those that do not know, I'm a huge fan of luchador wrestling uh, because on one side of my family, we're Native American with a little bit of Latino thrown in. And to all of us that are Latino, uh, we take our luchador wrestling pretty damn serious, okay? Um, so yeah, Eddie Guerrero, um, we knew he had his demons, drug addiction, and it was a sad day when he went. Um, I know at one point you could see he had problems. You could see it, and I remember I don't know, to be honest with you. I will just say it like this: with some of us Latinos, it's sometimes hard to follow our family lineage because we got a lot of kids. Okay, we end up with a lot of kids. We love kids. Okay, period. You know, um, so it's sometimes hard to like you know just look at some of the family names. Like, good God, how big is this family? It's big. Oftentimes, when I go see my mom's side of the family, a lot of times you'll hear me say, "We don't have a family. We got a freaking clan." Good God, there's a lot of us in the room. You know, a lot of us in the room. Uh, but we take our luchador wrestling pretty dang serious. Okay. Now, granted, like you know, Rey Mysterio, Jushin Thunder Liger, you know, guys like that. uh, Guys like that. By the time they got to the States and got popular here in the United States, I'm going to tell you all, okay, in when you look at it in that regard, okay, by the time they got to the States, well, I've not seen it. So I've not seen it. So I don't, if it exists, then, I don't know what to say on that. Okay. That's some messed up stuff right there. I've not heard anything. I might have to go take a look, see, and, and kind of, this needs to kind of stop, you know. But anyhow, as a suggestion, until we know for sure, uh, I want to, yeah, we don't want that up there. Okay. Moderators, I know you're in here. That's not a bannable offense, but that's definitely, we don't need that kind of hate stuff up here. Okay. Um, that's not what we're talking about tonight. Okay. We'll talk about that later. Later. But any hoop de doo. Okay. If you've ever seen true luchador wrestling directly from Mexico, I've had the opportunity to watch it satellite TV, uh, because my grandma and grandpa on my mom's mom and dad. I've not heard it. Oh, I'll have to go take a look. What's the name of it? Huh? I'll have to holler. But anywho, um, where was I? Oh, um, yeah, you'll have to tell me. I don't know what the name of it is, so I'll have to go research it myself, obviously, because until I see it, I don't believe it. Okay. Uh, so here it is in a nutshell. All right. If you've ever seen true luchador wrestling, it's very fast paced. So what we get here in the United States is oftentimes, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's a little watered down, uh, from what it truly is in, say, like, Mexico and further down south. It's really not as, you know, as exciting here in the United States as compared to what it is south of the border. Because, like I said, seeing, I can't even understand what the announcers are saying. I don't speak Spanish, but it is exciting to hear. Well, it's exciting to watch. So I definitely, just, exciting stuff there. Okay, absolutely, just mind blowing. Okay, okay. Wrestling is, um, okay. It is and it isn't. Okay. Uh, what they're doing, the wrestling rings in a lot of ways are basically almost like large trampolines, but they're built of obviously different materials, to make them, much better than a trampoline. Okay. Um, and on top of that, okay, um, the you have to take into consideration that, yeah, what they're doing is, it is a performance art, but they can still get hurt. Okay. um and that's not to say that they don't get hurt. Some guys get seriously injured, take serious concussions, and some of the crazy matches that they have is very, very dangerous. I Unless I know the name of the group, I don't believe it. So I ask you guys not to say another word unless you're going to actually, put the name in, say the name of the group. Okay. I don't believe it. All right. So in the meantime, unless you have something more than just, hey, I've heard, or, I see, um, then obviously I don't believe it. Okay. So we're going to leave that there. Moderators, you know, all right, you're welcome to. I'll be looking forward to it. All right. Thank you so much. I'll get to it right after the show today, which we're getting close to the end time anyways. But where was I? It is fake, but what they do, even though it's fake, it's still kind of real, if you will. Okay, it it's real but fake, sort of thing. If that makes any sense, all right, if you will, it's real but fake. All right, uh, it's real but fake, if you will. Uh, Absolutely. So, in essence, if you will, yeah, they can get hurt. As a matter of fact, Mick Foley talks about it. Hulk Hogan has had both of his hips replaced, and at one time he was like 6'8", but from what I understand, from doing that leg drop so often, um, his back has compressed, and he's no longer 6'8". I think he's like 6'4", if that's any indication, because of all the slamming. So it's, if you will, it's real. You know, the even though it's not really real, it's still, it's still, if you will, that, you know, these guys can get seriously hurt. That stiff shot from Goldberg that eventually caused Bret the Hitman Hart to have a stroke. Let's not forget that. Um, you know, um, let's not forget Shawn Michaels and his back injuries. Okay, let's, you know, um, there's a lot of that stuff. Obviously, a lot of that stuff that a lot of folks have not really taken into consideration. Um, and I will tell you that even though it's a performance art and they're not really meant to hurt each other, it does still happen. As I was talking about earlier, taking stiff shots. Sometimes the guys would purposely do stiff shots for a couple different reasons. Um, Number one, they wanted to be more, to look more real. So they would purposely hit each other harder just for that purpose. They would purposely hit each other so much harder to make it look more real for the audience. Good. So even though they're competitors and they know the finish of the match and they work it in the ring and everything, it doesn't mean that they still don't get hurt. As a matter of fact, I remember Scott Hall, who was also Razor Ramon in the WWE, often talking. He talked about that. How yes, it was real. The famous guitar shot from Honky Tonk Man hitting Jake the Snake Roberts in the WWE. Uh, from what I understand, the Honky Tonk Man uh, recalls taking and going over that thing with a carpet knife to the point where if you just pressed on it, it would fall apart. And the reason why he did that, he what he called gimmicking that guitar, is so Jake Roberts wouldn't get hurt so bad. So yeah, he still got hurt, but the shot would have been a whole lot more if he had not gimmicked that guitar, which Jake the Snake, uh, oftentimes claimed that guitar shot caused him a lot of neck injuries, which eventually led him into his drug and alcohol addiction that came later. Very interesting. Which the Honky Tonk Man's like, that's so bullshit, man. You were already doing that stuff. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I'm not sure on that one. I'm not 100% sure on that story. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I really didn't follow Jim Duggan's full story. I know he was, a big name in the WWE. Yeah, I know that much. I know that much. The two by four, USA and all that other stuff. Great wrestler. I don't think he got enough recognition for what he did in wrestling. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I don't think he got enough recognition for the amazing job he did in wrestling. Moderators, I'll let you handle that comment. Again, I understand your anger there, but we're not talking about that tonight. And that sort of comments, I still love my wife. Okay, so I ask that comment be removed. Show some respect. You're talking about a man's wife. Okay, regardless of how you might feel, show some respect, please. No matter how you might feel, let's leave it where it is. We'll talk about it later. Well, again, I ask that, and I believe that these are not bannable offenses, but I ask the moderators remove those comments, because if not, I'm probably going to start doing it. We don't need that kind of stuff going on. We don't want to talk like that. Show some respect, folks. Unless you are, in one of those folks that discriminates against disabilities, mental illness. Question. Really quick, we did talk about last time we did this segment. We did talk about Sergeant Slaughter. Now, a lot of people forget that Sergeant Slaughter, yes, he was in the WWF, but then when his contract ran out, well, I think we can all have our opinions on this, but in all honesty, again, show some respect. Okay, we're still uncovering a lot. We'll probably find out more later, but we're not talking about that tonight. We own retro wrestling, which we're almost to the end of the segment, anyways. But as I was saying, a lot of people tend to forget Sergeant Slaughter at one time made his appearance on G.I. Joe, Real American Hero. Who remembers when Sergeant Slaughter was on G.I. Joe, Real American Hero? Sergeant Slaughter and his Marauders. Bad. Love you, brother. I remember that. I wanted the toys, but I never got them. My parents couldn't afford it. My dad was a career firefighter, and most people think that no. Hey, what's going on, Danny? Danny, since you're here and we're talking retro wrestling, I know you and Mike run BUW, and I know a lot of folks, Danny, a lot of folks have been asking for you to do some of the commentary. You and Mike, doing BUW commentary together. And in all honesty, I think that would be a fantastic idea for BUW. And I would suggest, if you guys do decide to do it, definitely check out two commentary teams that will just blow your mind. Okay, definitely blow your mind. My two favorite commentary teams, most people would think Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. They were good, but in all honesty, I thought Jerry Lawler was a much better wrestler than he was a commentator. It's my opinion. But in reality, my personal two favorite commentary teams are of all time, starting with my favorite to second favorite, is, without question, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. And then, of course, right behind them, a very close right behind them, Vince McMahon and hang on, Jesse the Body Ventura. All right, Tori. All right. Catch up with you later. So I would definitely suggest that. Well, he's got Cinnamon now as his manager. I've got good, Yep. And I would definitely suggest listening to going back in time and watching some of that stuff that I'm referring to, like Saturday Night Main Event from the 1980s, Wrestling Superstars from the 1980s. I would definitely suggest a lot of that stuff. I think you guys would have a great time with that. Okay. and not so much watch the matches, listen to how they work together. And I honestly think that if you guys are going to do that, you would definitely reap the rewards, kind of like a face and heel commentary team, depending on how you wanted to do it. And obviously, knowing, uh, we're talking about me getting back on soon, okay? It's just been hard. It's been hard, okay? But I definitely suggest that. I definitely suggest that. All right, folks. So we have I'm so glad, Danny, that you came in towards the end because I could tell you that. Uh, but I definitely suggest listening to those commentary teams. I think I'll give you a holler. I'll give you a holler, okay? We'll talk more later, okay? All right, folks. That does bring us to a good stopping point for the evening. All right. Uh, Danny, I'm so glad that you came in. So I could tell you that because again, I honestly, we're still finding out stuff. Okay. But here we are, folks. Okay. We've crossed a lot of bridges, and we're not talking about Princess Faye tonight. I'm just, I'm still waiting. Okay. But that does bring us to a good stopping point for the evening. I love you guys. But as we let out for the evening, I'll have to get caught up with a few of you before I have to call it a night because I got to work tomorrow. It sucks. It's, just the way it is. But that does bring us to a good stopping point for the evening. I think it's about time. You guys heard me say it again. It's been a moment since I've said it like this. And it goes a little something like this. Get out there and work on a project. I don't care what it is, just do something with yourselves. Remember, idle hands and a creative mind go together like oil and water. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet and do something special for them today. And as always, for all of you out there, if no one out there has told you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you and have a happy 24. Thank you.